this being local elections, it could be a key test for the Prime Minister, with Labour hoping people's fury over alleged lockdown-breaking parties at number 10 will cause them to turn away from the Tories. We're joined now by the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Can you just clarify whether you currently, as a Labour Party, want the Prime Minister to resign or not? Because yesterday, Keir Starmer said this in the House of Commons. He asked Boris Johnson why he was still in place. Let's have a listen.
We think that he should go. Keir Starmer said that at Prime Minister's questions yesterday. He has broken the rules. Everybody else stuck to really tough lockdown restrictions, weren't able to go and see loved ones, family, including in people's last days and last hours of their lives, because people made sacrifices to keep others safe. And the Prime Minister, whilst all this was going on, rules that he set, he was breaking them with lockdown parties. So, look, our views, Keir's view, my view on the Prime Minister hasn't changed. He's not fit for office.
Except that,
he
of course,
has misled Parliament.
Yeah, there is the background, obviously, of the war. And from what your leader seemed to be saying a couple of weeks ago, that meant that the conditions had changed. We need stable leadership. So how come the position has shifted? Because, of course, the war still needs leadership.
So I don't take that same conclusion from that interview. What Keir is saying, and actually what is very clear in Parliament, is that across the government and the opposition, the views about Russia and about Ukraine are exactly the same. And so whether Boris Johnson is Prime Minister or another member of the Conservative cabinet, it doesn't matter, because the views and the resolution of Parliament, government and opposition to taking on Putin and supporting our friends in Ukraine is consistent across the whole House of Commons. So whether Boris Johnson is Prime Minister or someone else, that resolution when it comes to taking on Russia and defending Ukraine is consistent.
Let's talk about what the Chancellor said in his spring statement, because you, of course, are the Shadow Chancellor. You oppose, don't you, the national insurance rise, but that rise is a hypothecated tax which will go towards paying for care, social care, and, of course, the NHS. Why would a Labour Party oppose a tax rise that's so important?
What became clear in the spring statement last week is that the rise in national insurance isn't anything like a hypothecated tax, and the government has now accepted that. In fact, after saying for months and months and months this national insurance rise was essential for funding the NHS, the main premise of Rishi Sunak's statement in the House of Commons last week was to announce that he now disagreed with himself, and the majority of that national insurance rise has been scrapped. We would scrap it altogether. We don't think this is the right time to be raising taxes on working people when we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We are the only major developed economy that is increasing taxes on ordinary working people when we're in a cost of living crisis.
You find yourself in a slightly awkward position, though, as the Labour Party, when raising taxes and raising money that way is sort of part of your MO, isn't it? And you are now arguing against raising taxes. How else are we going to help the NHS and the care system out of what happened during the pandemic?
Well, Labour have always supported our National Health Service. It is part of who we are as a party. But you can raise taxes in different ways. The problem with national insurance is that it is a tax purely on people who go to work and those who employ them. So, for example, if you earn an income through dealing in stocks and shares, you don't pay a penny more in national insurance, even though you may be making an awful lot more money than somebody who goes out to work for a living.
Specifics then, Rachel Reeves. I mean, you'll have seen the front of most of the newspapers this morning with the issue with Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust, the biggest maternity scandal in the history of the NHS. just the most horrific detail of what has been going on at this trust and how the failure for those parents and those children that have sadly lost their lives through appalling care and appalling sort of dealing with the issues that were going on. We had Dr. Hillary in this morning discussing this. There is a chronic shortage across our NHS of staff, but 2,000 midwives we are short of. How are you going to fund the retrieval of those 2,000 midwives as well as all the other staff that we need in the NHS who are desperately trying to get back to where we need it to be? Because unless that investment is there, it's not going to happen. So can you give us some specifics for our viewers today of what you're going to do?
Well, as a mum of 2 young children, my heart breaks when I think about the suffering and the pain that those families have been through and the people who we've lost because of that negligence and that scandal. And people do need to be held to account for what happened at that hospital. What Labour are arguing and what I have said is that it is right that those with the broadest shoulders pay more in tax to fund our essential public services. It's not right that national insurance is being used to plug this gap because it is only paid by those people who go to work and those who employ them. It is not paid by those people, as I say, who deal in stocks and shares, who have a portfolio of buy-to-let properties. Why should those people who earn incomes in those ways not contribute to the additional funding that is needed for the National Health Service? So we would tax fairly and spend wisely and also grow the economy, because we need an economy that is growing and creating good jobs in all parts of the country to properly fund public services. And the truth is, the Conservatives have become a high tax party because they've become a low growth party and not generating that growth, that productivity, those high paid jobs that are needed to bring in that tax revenue.
We are facing a horrific cost of living crisis, as you will undoubtedly know. Our viewers are getting in touch with us regularly to talk about the fear that they have, particularly over fuel bills. You're suggesting that there's going to be a £600 cut to people's fuel bills, with I think it's is it sort of a one-off tax of the fuel companies in terms of their profits and trying to get them to pay. One of the things the government have said about that is that actually now is not the time to be taxing these fuel companies when we need them to invest in the fuel infrastructure in this country. You know, when we've got what's going on in Russia, we're trying to wean ourselves off our reliance on any sort of Russian oil or power, then actually we want to be encouraging these companies to come and invest more in the infrastructure here in the UK. So forcing them to pay this windfall tax is not the way to do it.
I do find it quite extraordinary that the Conservatives are increasing taxes on ordinary working people and yet not asking these big oil and gas companies to pay more in tax when their profits are going through the roof. The former chief executive of BP says that this tax is justifiable. The current chief executive of BP says that their company has got more money than it knows what to do with. They're making near record profits this year because of the inflated prices of oil and gas. If we introduced a windfall tax on those profits, we could take up to £600 off the bills of those who need the support the most. That would be my priority. That would be the priority of a Labour government. This government's buy now, pay later scheme for energy bills just does not meet the scale of the challenge. The response last week from the Chancellor was incredibly disappointing and will leave millions of families and pensioners worrying about how they're going to pay their gas and electricity bills.
Rachel Reeves, it was reported in The Telegraph that a senior member of the Cabinet recently said that you are the member of the shadow front bench that the government fears the most. The Labour Party has never had a female leader. I'm not sure, and we'll find out in the local elections that are coming up, how popular your current leader is. But is it a position that you would consider?
This country has never had a female Chancellor. I want to be Britain's first woman Chancellor, and I want to be a Labour Chancellor under Keir as Prime Minister.
Would you like to be leader of the Labour Party one day?
I can honestly say the job that I want more than anything is to get rid of the shadow from my title and be Chancellor of the Exchequer.
All right.
OK.
Rachel Reeves, thanks very much
indeed. Thanks very much.